Not gonna lie, when I first started as a student with taking sociological research classes, I thought it was going to be boring. Like math, who cares? Lots of people care about math, like as well you should. We really should. But you know how it kind of gets a bad rap and it's not entirely fair? Yeah, that's what I was doing to sociological research. Like, oh, this is going to be boring. This is going to be dull. If you're the type of person, maybe like me, that has a lot of questions, I have a lot of questions about the world. Why do we do what we do? I'm like, for instance, if you're the type of person who loves some people watching, then sociological research very well could be for you too, because that's we're studying the world around us, and that gets pretty darn interesting. This is going to look familiar to you because so many of us have taken science classes, and sociology is a social science. And so we use that research process that is so familiar in scientific study. One of the first things you've got to do when you're doing sociological research is you've got to read extensively. You've got to do a literature review. Oftentimes, if you are doing master's or PhD level research. I only have a master's. A research or literature review could probably be 20 plus sources at least that you then write, connecting all the different pieces of the things that you're learning from reading research in the area that you hope to study. This accomplishes two things. Number one, you kind of, if you have an idea of what you want to research, you get to make sure that nobody has researched that exact thing before, but then also you become an expert in that field, right? A lot of times I have found that areas of sociological research can be pretty small, all things considered. Like you become the expert in um, environmentally friendly coffee labels and marketing. And I didn't come up with that off the top of my head because I attended Cal State Fullerton for my master's degree. And one of the classes we took, we had to read all the professors in the department's research, and that was one of them. But that person then became the person that knew about that area in its entirety. A lot of times you'll find kind of combinations of things, I think, that you're like, I'm going to combine these two concepts and create new knowledge, right? So that's what you start with. You start with a literature review. You read many, 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 many resources. Next, like I said, this will look familiar, right? You come up with a hypothesis, what you want to study, and you collect data, seeing if you're right or what exactly is going on out there. Data is collected, there's two different methods, quantitative and qualitative, and we'll be talking about both of those in subsequent lectures. Now, moving on quickly, there's just a couple of issues, kind of a tension in sociological research. And so that tension between not, being logical, being objective, stepping away from your research and approaching it from that kind of they them perspective, that you don't get involved. And there's absolutely, that's incredibly important. But it's interesting. There's another perspective in research that basically is looking at, this is not about spewing, oh, and then I think. It's not just about like, oh, and then I get to share all my opinions. No, 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 no. But to consider that if you have a connection or lived experience in the area that you're studying, to indicate that in your research, to not do they them, that it's, me, I, us. Doesn't mean that it needs to be a first person, and then I. But to make a simple statement, to, like it says, the term positionality, to locate yourself within your research. For instance, I did research for my master's project on students receiving special education services and creating caring connections between parents and families of those students and the school and teachers at in that department. I myself am a parent to a student who receives special education services throughout her schooling. And so I simply made a statement in my research as I introduced it that not only was I studying this from, a sociological perspective, but that I also had experience with it. It didn't mean that I went into a whole bunch of storytelling, but that idea of locating yourself in what you're studying. A lot of times, what motivates us to find answers? Something that maybe we've struggled with or we've seen other people in our lives that we care about struggle with. What motivates us to try and find answers? Really, that's what sociological research is all about. And so, like I said, if you're the type of person that just, you have a lot of questions. Just like me, you might really like sociological research too.